Well, we're going to end this week by looking at another characteristic, which is called being hospitable. And again, this is a word that needs some definition and also some contextualizing, if you will. Literally, the term means to be fond of guests. And immediately what comes into our mind is the idea that we are always inviting people into our homes. And I think it's a beautiful thing to invite people into your home and into your life, to share life together with other people. But at the same time, I think that can lead to kind of some extremes, which can become problematic on a very practical level. In a broader sense, what the term really is implying is that there's a generosity of heart. Not just simply having people over for lunch or dinner or to hang out and have small group Bible studies in your home, but it means that you really have a generous disposition towards other people, and that you don't live a fearful and defensive life where you're frightened of other people. Now, let's talk about this on a different level for a few moments, because I think it's very important. Each of us has a different kind of personality profile. That some of us are multi-relational people. We get energized by being in crowds and being surrounded by a bunch of people. Most of us are kind of in the middle there someplace. We like people, we like to interact people socially, but we have our limits. Sometimes we just get kind of tired of being around people. And I have to confess, I'm probably in there someplace, because as a pastor, I enjoy being around the people in my church. I enjoy meeting new people. I enjoy talking with people. I like getting to find out who people are and what their story is. All that's pretty enjoyable. And yet, at some points, there's such a large number of people that come through the doors that it can be a bit overwhelming. I mean, you just can only process so much. And many times the largest of the crowd really inhibits the ability to have any kind of significant or meaningful conversation with people. And I had one of our elderly saints pointed out to me. She said, you walk to me and ask me how I'm doing and all of that, and then she says almost immediately you turn and walk away, and I never get a chance to tell you. And I said, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Because I see small shiny things and I get distracted very easily. I mean, the reality is that there's a discipline that you have to employ there. At the same time, I find that when I'm talking with people, there are people who just simply walk up and start talking to me and interrupt the conversation, them not being aware that maybe I'm having an in-depth with other people. These are some of the realities we face, those of us who are in public ministry and interact with a lot of people. It's really hard to process. There are some other people who are, we would call them singular relational personalities. They deal with people on a very limited basis. And so when they get into a crowd, it has the opposite effect. It just drains their batteries. What's surprising, I think, for most people is we think that the multi-relational people, the people who are gregarious, who just love the crowds, are the people who are most effective. And in fact, singular relational people tend to be the most creative and the people who get the most done because they've recognized that they have to focus. Now, there's a myth that we have in our culture that there's some people who are good at multitasking. And what the research has found is that people who try to do multiple things at the same time may be able to kind of juggle a lot of balls at once, but they don't juggle them well. There's a lot of things that drop, and they don't ever really have time to focus on one thing at a time to do it well. I had to learn that because, I'm a personality who's kind of interested in a lot of different things and looking at different ways. I had to develop a discipline of not multitasking, but learning to singularly focus on one thing until it has been fully completed. And what I learned over the years is that learning to focus more deeply has enabled me to do what I do better, which means there's a whole lot of things that I don't do anymore because I'm not that good at it. When I first got saved, I had some musical background. I played the guitar and piano poorly, but it was better than most people, so I was able to lead worship and find my place in the Christian community, and that was really exciting. But when I began to have the opportunities to teach the Bible, I found out not only did I find much more energy from studying and teaching the scriptures than I did in playing music, that I finally had to kind of decide I can't do both of them. And especially can't do both of them well, so I have to decide which one I want to do. I remember a friend of mine, well-meaning, came up to me and said, well, you got to use your musical gift, because if you don't use it, God will take it from you, which I learned later on isn't biblical. But I realized also that wasn't really where the passion of my heart lay. And so, I find this interesting because my wife, who is passionate about organizing, order, and structure, and she has this ability to walk into a place that's in chaos and kind of really sort things out and get it back in order. And that's why I rely upon her, even within our church, to tell me what do we need to be focusing on that's not running well. So the people come there and they say, wow, this church is so organized and so clean and kept up and kept in a state of repair and so forth. And to many degrees, my staff does that, but I credit my wife with a lot of that. And even with my own scheduling, I have her managing my schedule, because I tend to say yes to too many things too quickly and then get overwhelmed. And she's really good at basically saying, you need to pace yourself. You need to step back and realize you can't do it all. What is it that God is really wanting you to focus on? So, there's something about that. We need to understand that difference. But, people like my wife, they get around too many people for too long, and their batteries are drained. They're exhausted. They need quiet time to be able to restore their batteries. I think on some level that's true of all of us, because I think all of us need to learn how to be quiet before the Lord, how to still our souls and to be able to hear from God what He's trying to say. And I think that helps us not to get to a place where we dislike people. And that's what I find, that oftentimes people get to a place where they really don't like people because they've been overwhelmed by people. They haven't learned how to shut the door or close the gates. They haven't learned how to really kind of restore their souls. And that's why I think it's really, really important gift, because the idea of literally saying, well, it means that we just have to allow a lot of people in our lives, I think is a misconception. Quite honestly, my wife and I used to live in communes. Where we were living communally with a lot of people. One house we were in was a 2-bedroom house with 1 bath, and we had 36 people in it. And believe me, it was not a comfortable situation. And we both found that we had to just kind of go places to be alone if we wanted to have any kind of intimate relationship with God. So, it's one of those kind of things that you figure out who you are and how God has made you, and then you honor that God made me the way I am, and that I can't do everything at all at once, and I can probably only be good at a few things, and that's how God made me, and that's okay, and you don't need to apologize for it. If you get exhausted with being around people, you don't need to apologize for that. That's who God made you to be, and you need to find a way of managing your life in a way that it's orderly and structured. We have friends that come into our homes. They stay with us, they visit with us, they hang out, and it's an enjoyable thing. But there comes a point where we're also happy to see them go, and they're happy to go because we've just seen too much of each other for too long a period of time. That's the way life is, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the idea of being hospitable doesn't mean hospitable. Means a couple of simple things, I think. Number one, that we like people. We don't resent people. We don't dislike them. We actually enjoy them. We also realize that we have to be generous towards other people. And it's an amazing thing to me. My wife's generosity towards people is something that staggers me. Whenever we have guests or we have friends or people that have needs or people in staff, the level that she goes to make to sure that they are given just the right gift or given just the thing that they enjoy. She studies those things that makes people happy and responds to that. Well, that's hospitality. That's the idea that I want to really bless other people, be responsive to their needs in their life, and help them in their journey. Because the person who is hospitable is one who helps people move along in their journey of following Christ through this life. And that every one of us is given a unique capacity to do that, and we need to really respect that in ourselves and honor it in ourselves and protect it from being misused by other people. There are some people who very selfishly will suck the life right out of you. And you need to not let that happen. That's your job. You can not become angry at them. You need to realize that's your job when you say, that's enough. So anyway, hope that makes sense. We'll pick this up next week. Thank you for taking the time.